In the list that you had of those attributes.
So let's list them again, shall we?
Yes.
So faith, will, humility, truth, love. Yep.
Do you consider prayer to be an attribute of will and desire?
Certainly. In fact, prayer is desire.
So it's not included up there because it seems so significant to the list.
It is very significant to your relationship with God, of course, prayer. But prayer is the full desire expressed within you, in your heart, from an emotional position towards God to receive love. So it actually is very much connected with how you use your will. It's one of the things you can do to use your will. I feel it's the most important thing you could do to use your will. The most important way to use your will is to learn how to pray. But just because a person is using their will in another direction, it doesn't mean that they're using their will to pray. But also, prayer is not something that God forces upon you. God doesn't force it upon you. It's dependent upon how you exercise your will as to whether you will personally engage prayer. Right? So while prayer is essential for your relationship with God, right, it is actually an aspect of how you use your will. And in fact, prayer, in my opinion, is the most important thing you could actually choose to do in the way in which you use your will. But it's still an aspect of how you use your will. Now, if you look at what prayer does, so if we look at it from a sort of diagrammatic perspective, here we have God's soul with masculine and feminine qualities. Here we have our half of the soul. So let's just draw it. If I'm male or something, let's just draw it like my half of the soul connected to my bodies, my spirit body and my physical body. It's my soul that was given the gift of will. So it's not my intellect, right? It's not my mind, as people will tell you. It's your soul that's given the gift of will. It's how your soul uses its will as to whether it's praying or not. And the way it needs to exercise its will to pray is to have a longing, a sincere and pure, so let's define it more fully, sincere, pure longing to receive love from God. Right? And when your soul is using its will in that regard, in other words, when you're having a passionate desire within yourself as a feeling, in that regard, you're praying. Right in that moment. But as soon as it's not a passionate desire anymore and it's just words coming out of your head, you're not praying anymore. And as soon as you connect to the passionate desire again, you're praying again. And as soon as you disconnect from that passionate desire and you're just thinking things, you're not praying anymore. Does that make sense? And it can be as instant as that, switching in and out of prayer. So a lot of people who say they're praying, from an intellectual perspective, they're maybe stating a rosary, or they may be having some kind of Our Father who is in heaven, prayer to God, but it's not coming from the heart. That's not a prayer. From God's perspective, that's not a prayer. A prayer is something that engages God's soul from your soul. And that has to be feelings, longings that have developed within your soul that are pure in nature, not driven by addictions even. So even a prayer that goes something like, I want you to come and fix up my life. Well, God's not going to answer prayers like that. And while that might be coming from your soul, there are certain prayers that God won't answer, because to do that would have to take away some of God's laws, and God's not ever going to do that. So if you want God to fix up your life, right, then that's not a very sincere prayer. And the reason why it's not sincere is because you're responsible for what you created in your life. So wanting God to fix it up is not very responsible, and God won't respond to those kind of prayers. God will help you work through the issues as to why you created those things in your life if you sincerely have a longing to know. So that's what prayer is. And so therefore you could say prayer is the greatest expression of mankind's will. Does that make sense? So the greatest expression of your will is desiring to actually pray, or to define it, to have a sincere and pure longing to receive love from God, to allow the transformation of your soul by the receiving of love from God. That is the thing that will cause your transformation. And we've been talking about addictions and fear and other things earlier in the day, but those particular things are the things that prevent your transformation. This is the thing that engages your transformation. So prayer is the thing that engages your transformation of the soul, and the things that prevent your transformation of the soul are fear, addictions, using your will out of harmony with love, rejecting truth, rejecting faith, rejecting humility. They are the things that prevent you from changing. But the thing that actually changes you is God's love entering your soul. And in fact, I feel the majority of us need to learn to just give up trying to change ourselves and just focus on changing these things so that we can receive God's love into our soul. If we focused on that, we'd have a very much more productive change in our lives as a result. Does that answer, Denny? Go on.